In this session, we are going to create a program that will first read a input, integer input, and then we will judge on the integer. If the input is positive, we will print out positive. If it's negative, we print out negative. Otherwise, print out 0. So we will go through this programming process again. And in fact, throughout the course, we are going through this process again and again until it becomes your instinct to start to thinking about Java programming when you see a question. So first of all, we need to clearly define what the program is to do. And that has been pretty much covered in the question description. Second, we need to visualize the program running on the computer. Again, if it's a graphic user interface, usually you will need someone to design the user interface and define the interaction between user and the program. For simple questions like our course, we will just use standard in and standard out. So read an integer input from standard in. This is the input. Then print out one of the strings to standard out, which is the console in Eclipse. This is the program input and output. That's how we will visualize the program. Now we use design tools to create the model of the program and check the model for logical errors. What we are going to do is, again, using pseudocode. Oops. First, we will read an integer, right, from standard in. Then second, if the input is positive, print out positive. And here, we said if the input is negative. However, as you can see, this is not a separate logic. It's a part of the whole logic here. So if the input is positive and if the input is negative, these are two branches that will not overlap with each other. And there's no need that after we test this as positive, we need to test this negative again. So instead of doing two if, what we should have is an else if. And finally, we will have an else. This is going to be the pseudocode we are going to use. Now let's go back to Eclipse. I'm going to create a new class. Let's call it sample question if else if. And remember to always use title case for each word in the class name. So we finish that. And then once you see this class skeleton, type in public static void main string array args. Now, one thing to note is that for square brace, for this curly brace, you can either put it right after the class name or method name, like here. Or you can do it starting in the next line, occupying one line. It really is a matter of personal preference. Java will remove this new line code anyway. So to Java, whether the starting curly brace is here or here, doesn't matter. But for us, it's more like a personal preference. Which one do you like? For me, myself, because our textbook use this way, this standard, I will always use this starting from a single line in this teaching. But at work, I usually do this, putting this in the ending line. But either way, as we said, this is a matter of personal preference. It's not going to change the outcome of the result. So now that we have the main method, let's create the Java doc. And I'm going to copy the course description, the question description here. Put it in, a little bit indentation will certainly help. and then Java.doc comment for main method. Entry point. Okay, so then we copy the pseudocode, oops, inside here. As always, leave a space in between. Now, note that in this particular code, method, print output itself is a part of a logic. So we don't need a separate output. But of course, if you need a separate logic for output, then it should follow. Now, let me copy the code from the scanner setup code from other programs. So I'm going to get this scanner object of keyboard, then I'm going to read an integer by, also I need the appropriate prompts to the user. Please enter your integer. Right, and this, of course, right now it should be called, let's just say, int input. So if the input is positive, which means if, and don't forget this parenthesis, greater than 0, then curly brace. And else if parenthesis again, if it is negative, and the curly brace, and then finally else. What we need to have is to have a system output. Actually, we can copy this from here. We need to print out the positive for positive, negative for negative, and oops, copy and paste, and 0 for 0. All right, now let's run this code. I will put the -5, -3, negative. If I run this again, input a 0, we get 0.